Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Ask Me Anything about Microsoft Security Exposure Management. I am Brian Brecken. I'm the Director of Posture Management here at Microsoft. And we're here almost an hour today to talk about anything you have about a new product for exposure management. So with me, I have two people that really know this stuff. They're from the engineering team. So I'm just the marketing guy. I'll ask the questions, but I'll hand over most of the technical questions to Tomer and Ronit. So why don't we start with Tomer? What's your job and what do you do?
Hey, Brian. Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Tomer Teller. I lead the product team for exposure management. I'm with Microsoft for almost 10 years now, dealing with pre-breach security, vulnerability management, with a lot of background in security research.
Perfect. Thank you. And Ronit, I hear you have a wonderful boss, by the way, Ronit. Who is that?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Ronit Reger. I do report to Tomer, so that's my wonderful boss. So I'm a product manager on the exposure management team. I focus on all sorts of areas around attack surface management, bringing in data from various tools to complete your attack surface. So those are my areas of specialty, and I also have a bunch of experience here at Microsoft in the security space, pre-breach security, posture, compliance. So looking forward to hearing your questions today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, I'm working with a couple of juniors here. I have a little bit over 20 years here at Microsoft, and it's been exciting time and exciting years. This new release that we have is something which is really landing in the market really well and moving the needle towards more proactive security versus the reactive incident response capability. So I wanted to kick it off a little bit, since Tomer, you're kind of the leader of the product, owning the product all up and the engineering team. Tell us about what are some of the newest features and why are we doing this AMA right now? What are the newest features in exposure management?
Yeah. So where do I start? So exposure management is a new concept, right? Imagine that up until now, our customers acquired a lot of different security tools from a lot of different vendors, and each of those security tools kind of cried for attention. Hey, fix me first. Customers were really struggling to understand, where should I start first? How do I handle all of these, plethora of dashboards, schemas, APIs, permission, persona that needs to handle all of that? So one of the innovation that we pushed and just released at Ignite is our ability to consolidate all of that into a single pane of glass, bring all the attack surfaces, the internal, the external, the cloud, the end user, everything into a single place, so you can go view all the inventory, view all the recommendation, prioritize, and eventually remediate those. So as part of that, we released a lot of new capabilities in our latest release, starting with attack path analysis, a capability that connects the dots between those attack surfaces, bringing together different teams. We added a very crucial capability to detect critical assets, the ability to find, because not all assets were born equal, right? The more assets we discover from all of these attack surfaces, we cannot protect everyone at the same time in the same way. And since the threat landscape is dynamic, the assets has to be dynamic as well, and we need to adjust the policies and adjust the controls and so on. So our ability to find who are those critical assets that we need to protect more than everyone else is a critical capability that we also delivered. And there's many more, such as security initiative to manage your programs, the ability to assign granular role-based access to allow different persona between the team to create kind of a mishmash between cloud and endpoint and identity and cloud. So many capabilities in our latest release.
I'm sure we're going to get to some of the questions here, but Ronit, kind of a leading question in that one. What would your favorite feature be inside of this release of exposure management?
That's a little unfair of a question, but one of the exciting things we just released, actually, to public preview, finally publicly available, is the ability to for customers to connect additional tools beyond Microsoft security signals to the exposure management program. And that third-party connector feature actually has a special place in my heart. The way exposure management works is that basically all of the Microsoft security tools you already have, whether it's Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Cloud, Defender for Identity, Entra, Defender for external exposure management, all of these tools automatically bring data into our system for exposure management, and that enables us to map the entire attack surface and provide all these great capabilities, right? To understand all of your critical assets, to create those attack path maps, to understand what could be compromised. But we realize that some customers do have additional security tools beyond that Microsoft stack. And so what we've done is opened it up to additional third-party tools that customers might be using in their security stack. So that includes additional vulnerability management products that customers use, like Qualys, Rapid7, and Tenable. And we've also started bringing data from ServiceNow CMDB. We know that customers manage their assets in that CMDB. And in order to create a complete picture of, hey, this is my entire attack surface, these are all my assets, we're pulling those in as well. So it's exciting that we can create this truly consolidated view for customers of what their attack surface looks like, do the calculation of those metrics in order to create those security initiatives and enable customers to really improve their posture.
Cool, very nice. Okay, Tomer, Ronit, I'm sorry. These are the lobbying questions. These are the easy ones that I gave you up front. You knew those were coming. Let's get into the details of questions from our audience around the world. So one that's really interesting and comes up quite a bit, and I think, Tomer, you might be the right person to kind of dive into this with your history as well. And I thought I heard that Secure Score is now part of exposure management. Is that score still available elsewhere? Like, how is it different in exposure management? How does that make it different? Like, what is there still a Secure Score? What's the evolution?
Yeah, great question. So Microsoft Secure Score, the tool, not the metric, was generated. We created that solution a couple of years ago. And this was our first take to build a unified posture management solution, bringing together posture assessment from endpoint and identity and cloud and SaaS and so on. And one of the things that we learned from our customers is when they're coming to a solution and get a list of recommendations, they get the what. What do I need to do? They're not getting the why do I need to do it. And this is exactly kind of the learning that we baked into Microsoft Exposure Management. The new concept that we just delivered that we call the Security Initiative actually turns that around. Now, instead of looking at security recommendation, we're actually looking at threats that relates to those recommendation that coming from Secure Score, and as part of that, we're consolidating Microsoft Secure Score and baking it inside exposure management. So all the recommendations, all the metrics, all the capabilities, all the management capabilities are going to be consolidated within the exposure management unified experiences, because we understand that eventually it's all about one exposure, one place to view your exposure and improve your posture.
I like that answer. For me, when I look at it and I talk to customers about it, I've talked about Secure Score for years as well, is exposure management also gives the ability to be more granular in a scoring level. So an organization can take the security initiatives for endpoint, for cloud, for identity, and even for something like ransomware protection, and look at that score particularly, instead of having a Secure Score that spans across all security teams. So with security initiatives, they have the option of doing kind of both.
Yeah.
Both looking at all up scores, how well we're protected against certain attacks, but also look at an evaluation of threat and metrics, kind of a KPI view of a particular area, right? So I like where we're going, but it does take some time for organizations and customers around the world to what are you doing? What's this one? What's this one? It's going to take some time for people to kind of adapt to this new granular view of Secure Score, right?
Microsoft Secure Score was very broad, right? When you try to look at the metric and try to understand what does it mean, it was a mishmash of a lot of domains. So what we did, we broke it down into actual initiatives that security teams around the world ask us to pursue. They wanted to go and hunt and reduce their exposure against ransomware, but they didn't know exactly which recommendation within SecureScore then I need to do, right? They didn't got the what or the why I need to fix it and connect it to the what. This is exactly how we change things around with Microsoft Exposure Management.
Cool, thank you. We'll see some more questions come up on that later on in the chat here. So let's switch it a little bit. And Ronit, you talked a little bit about this in your intro as well, but one of the questions came in is like, how do I make sure I have the full view of attack paths? Right? How do I get the full view of my attack paths? One of the questions we came in.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. One of the things this kind of relates to what Tomer was saying as well, right? Think about SecureScore and all the list of recommendations and this huge list of endless recommendations for how to improve your security. But the purpose of attack paths is to actually go and find, look at kind of the world of your attack surface in a graph view, the same way that an attacker would, right? Rather than work in kind of lists of recommendations, we're looking at that graph view of how the different assets and the different elements of your environment actually interact with each other and can access each other, right? And so we look at things in this graphical way and think about, okay, what is an actual path that an attacker can take from a viable entry point, for example, an internet exposed VM, and then from there move on to with permissions to maybe another machine, which then maybe has permissions to a database, which then maybe contains sensitive data, and that database is critical, and so that path would actually lead to to a truly critical vulnerability. So the purpose of attack paths, it really helps prioritize those recommendations in a true way, right? In the way that can actually protect your environment from those potential attacks. Now, the way we aggregate all of these attack paths is we have an experience within exposure management. You can go into the menu and you can kind of look at attack paths, and there we have kind of the list of all the attack paths that we've analyzed and we've found based on that graphical view. And we have a list there based on different types of paths that attacker can take. And then we kind of show here are the different kinds of paths, and here are the different resources and assets involved. And then, of course, link those to recommendations for how to break those paths. Now, in addition to just showing those list of paths, you could go into that and kind of see this full list of paths, but we also try to isolate some especially important elements, such as what we call choke points. A choke point is actually a node that a bunch of attack paths go through. And if you break the attack path at that point, then that's going to break a bunch of attack paths, right? If you remediate the vulnerability on that choke point, then suddenly now you've reduced the number of attack paths significantly by just kind of focusing on that point. So what we recommend customers do is to go in, look at what kind of attack paths we've identified, find those choke points, understand where their efforts really should be focused in order to most significantly reduce their exposure and reduce their risk.
I like that approach. And I think one of the key paths that I have learned as well around the customers, just there's one view of like understanding your attack path and getting the full view of attack paths also mean that you have to have the signals, the data from each one of those exposed areas, such as external, internal, and data, and so on. Like you got to be connected to the tools, right? So if you don't have the number of tools that you use, so if you don't have Defender for Cloud, or if you don't have a CNAPP solution or a cloud security solution, you won't see attack paths. So the real value of exposure management is when it gets connected to all of the tools and that you use and to manage your different identity endpoints, cloud, on-prem environments. That's when you really get the attack paths and the real value from the product, right? So
yeah, exactly. And that's what's exciting about what we're doing, right? That we're bringing all these signals from all the different types of security products, from all the different assets, and understanding those connections and those relationships. And we're able to identify paths not only within a certain silo, but actually across the different silos, right? And across the different whether it's cloud, on premise, and so on. Very exciting.
Cool. I got one little follow-up to that, which was one of the questions. Like all of this beautiful stuff that Tomer and you guys went through, like when is this available in GCC in the US, the GCC High and the government clouds in the US? Like what's our plan for that? Because it's not available at the GA that we have right now. Like what are we thinking about that, Tomer?
So actually, this is a very customer favorite, right? Many of our customers, especially I was walking at Ignite floor 2 weeks ago, and a lot of customers ask me, this is wonderful. When do I get it in GCC? I'm a Gov customer. So the good news is this: it's a work in progress. We're working on getting that into the next quarter, right? Into the next quarter. Support for a different Gov, I believe, Fairfax, GCC High, and so on. We will publish an article around that, but definitely something top of mind for the team to support and increase because there's demand.
Yeah, thank you. I think that and the licensing question might be the two questions we get the most, and we'll get to the licensing question in a little bit today. I'm sure we're going to get it as well in here. But one other question that came in, which is related to like the UI, the experiences, and everything that we have, because we have so many tools that we're connected with. How do we manage granular accessibility, and who has access to the tool? Like, are we going to use RBAC, or do we use enterprise admin roles and Entra ID roles, I should say, in here for delegating the access and delegating the views for our users, right? What's our balance between built-in roles versus RBAC?
Yeah. First of all, there's an interesting question around the persona. Who is the persona of exposure management, right? If you go and ask a lot of security teams today, most of the structure is there's the endpoint team, there's the cloud team, there's the identity team. Each one of them has a persona that manage their posture. The problem is this structure creates a silo. The identity team only looks at identity issues, and they don't see the transitive risk, how they're putting other at risk. In order to solve that, we pulled all the data, as Ronit mentioned earlier. We pulled all the data into our exposure graph, and we created a new unified role, a unified RBAC role that we just launched at GA that allows granular access into that data. To answer your question, our recommendation is to use the unified RBAC. It provides much more granularity, but it works hand in hand with Entra ID roles.
Yeah, I like that approach because there's two parts in that, which is one is the actual viewing of the capabilities within the exposure management UI and experience. But then you might need Entra ID roles or an endpoint role or something else if you are going to remediate and mediate, or you want to hand it over to the security team or the IT pro team that does the work. So there's going to be a combination, but I think the answer to this one is clearly that recommendation is to use the RBAC when it relates to like the experiences within the exposure management product. And so I like that. All right, I teed it up about the licensing question. Of course, we have it in there as well. Can you please explain how the licensing works for exposure management? And I think I might take that myself. So exposure management is a tool, like we've already said, it's a tool that integrates with all of the Microsoft security tools that a customer uses. So you use Defender for Cloud to manage and control the multi-cloud environment, MD for Azure or GCP or AWS, for example. You use Defender for Applications to manage SaaS applications and so on. So what we have done with the licensing is that the organizations and customers, they have to buy and use the security tools. You have to buy and use the security tools that are managing the security domains and the assets that are out there. All that data is something that you already have. What we're doing in exposure management is bringing all that data together into this graph and into this experience to bring all of your data together, right? So you pay for exposure management by actually licensing the underlying security tools. So basically you would pay and you would buy Microsoft E5 security, for example, to get the majority of the Defender suite and Microsoft Entra, IDE P1 and P2 and so on. But then you will also add, for example, Defender for Cloud if you wanted to include the Defender for Cloud and cloud experiences, and Defender for external attack surface management if you want to get that view. So back to one of our previous questions, how do I get the full view of my attack path and my attack surface? By having the security tools integrated. Exposure management does not replace any one of your security or security posture management tools. It is the unifying layer on top, but then it provides some capabilities of critical assets and other things as kind of a platform service. So licensing wise, we charge, and you pay, you buy by buying that standard the security tools from the Microsoft stack. Then when you own that, and you also own third-party tools that you want to integrate with, that's where we will have a charge. So we will charge basically per asset in those third-party security tools. If you have a vulnerability assessment tool such as Tenable, Qualys, Rapid7, you will have number of assets that you have covered by that tool. So you will cover and say about which assets are you going to be covered. So you will pay and charge per asset that is covered by that third-party tool. Not what you already have in the system, everything that's how many assets you have in that target system is what you have. All right. So, and we will announce the actual pricing and so on of the third-party connectors. Will come here in the next few weeks, and the GA of that is in the next quarter as well. When we actually start charging for it. Right now, we're kind of public preview. We're not charging for it, but we will charge as soon as we go GA about the public of the 3P. Okay. I hope that explains it. There's also an FAQ, everything on our website as well. There's a link in the chat right now for AKMS /ABA exposure management. If you also do the other link, some of the producers can show that as well. There's an AKMS /exposure management, just exposure management after AKMS. That will take you to our webpage that has there's an FAQ that explains the licensing, explains the 3P third party, non-Microsoft security solution as well. So cool.
I think just to reiterate what you said, another way to also look at it, it's very similar to the XDR&C model, where the XDR is the glue that brings together signals from MD and MDI and MDO. You own E5. You don't buy XDR. You buy MD and MDI and MDO. The data flows into XDR to help you build the incident. The same thing happened with exposure management. You're not double paying for the same data. You already own MD and MDI, MDO. We're just pulling the posture data, the asset, the context, the metadata, the policies into our exposure graph and build those attack paths. So it's kind of a yin and a yang, recommendation and alert, attack path and an incident, right? Side by side, proactive, reactive. And on top of it, very similar to a SIEM where you're going to pull data from a third-party system and you have consumption-based, same thing will happen just on the consumption is per asset. So very simple, very similar mental model as the XDR.
Love it. Thank you so much. I think if anybody else wants to get some more clarity, please look at that website and see the FAQ on there as well. Okay, let's get to the next one. One other question from LinkedIn. Will exposure management include recommendations and steps to address the issues, prioritizations, and mediations or changes that are needed? Who wants to take it?
I can grab that one. So, in our system, again, kind of what Tomer talked about earlier, that SecureScore was kind of the classic way to manage all recommendations with different lists and different kind of priorities assigned to each. We still have the concept of the recommendations, right? We're still looking for those misconfigurations, those areas where the posture is not ideal, the areas where we see vulnerabilities, we see certain risks. But the difference now is that the kind of the prioritization is actually done with what we have with these with attack paths and with these choke points and with these areas that actually show where the risk is highest. So all of these are actually attached to recommendations. The recommendations are there. We provide some information on how to remediate, how to mobilize the team to do that. We're also working more on that. That's one of our big focus areas also going forward, making sure that the customers do have enough information, once they have that prioritized set of recommendations that they know they need to now target to most reduce their risk, then here are the steps that you need to do to kind of mobilize and remediate and make sure those are very clear and that customers know exactly what they need to do. But that whole kind of concept of prioritization has changed. The mindset has changed a little bit from, let's not just kind of give these kind of static scores to the different recommendations, but rather let's look at the whole picture and try to prioritize based on what we're seeing. What are the areas of your kind of attack surface all up we're seeing that could lead you to the most risk, that could leave you, for example, open to to certain risks. And the initiatives that we have are also kind of aligned with that, right? Because think about, let's say you want to now address specifically the recommendations associated with ransomware, because now your organization has decided we want to take care of the ransomware risk in our organization, and so you have this initiative that focuses all those recommendations from that area, and also again kind of brings in that context of prioritization for addressing ransomware. And so that's kind of where we're trying to shift the mindset of, let's make sure that you understand where are the areas you need to remediate, how to mobilize, but actually put these within the context of, okay, I now want to resolve this particular area or make sure that my attack surface is reduced in the areas of greatest risk all up. Hope that helps.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. One of my favorite things that the team did when it comes to these recommendations is the tool itself, and each one of the recommendations that is prioritized and mediated and so on. There's a link to the actual tool that you need to go to implement the remediation if your IT ops and security operations team are working together closely and so on, right? But there is also a way for you to share that link, share that information with the IT ops team. Or you might be working with an outsourced vendor that says, here's all the security teams, and you need to ask a vendor or a service provider to go do the fix. So, sending a link to the actual remediation with all the backup information and so on is in there as well. So I like that. I like those two, capabilities that the product provides to do that remediation as well. So cool. Thank you. The next one kind of goes back to the licensing question again. So, but what products and license do you need to view the full attack path? What is that? Tomer, tell us.
Yeah. So think about the attack path as think of a pyramid, where in order to build an exposure management, there's a set of layers that you need to go through. First of all, you need to build your attack surface, right? These are the tools that Ronit mentioned earlier. You need to bring the data from your solution. If it's Microsoft or non-Microsoft, we're connecting to and we're building all the data, we're deduplicating it, we're normalizing it, and we're putting it on the exposure graph. And one of our secret sauce is connecting the dots between those, right? So connecting the dot between two assets. And in order to create that edge that knows that my Tomer PC can log into Brian PC, I need information from Identity Fabric, whether it's Entra, whether it's Okta, whether it's Active Directory, and so on. This helps us kind of connect the dots between the different assets. So kind of the bare minimum products in order to see an attack path is, first of all, a solution that provides asset information. It could be MDE, it could be another endpoint security solution, it could be CMDB, right, that provides asset information, and an identity fabric such as Entra ID, so or MDI, Microsoft Defender for Identity. So if you want to see, for example, on-premise attack path, you will need both MDE and MDI, because you need both the assets and the identities, the links, the permission. If you want to see hybrid attack path that cross from the endpoint to the cloud, you also need a cloud attack surface solution, such as Microsoft Defender for Cloud. And then we're pulling the data, we're consolidating, we're building the edges from the endpoint through the permission all the way through the cloud, and those attack paths are continuously being generated. That's the beautiful thing about it. Attack path, the more data the exposure graph has, from the more tools, from the more attack surfaces, from the more kind of fabrics, the better the attack path becomes, because we get to see what the attacker don't have. It's the blueprint of the organization. We get to see how the organization looks like from an attacker perspective, so we can be more proactive and faster than attacker can compromise. So, yep.
You basically need the products and licenses for each one of the security tools around you. That's
Correct.
like the basics of these questions, right?
Yep.
And then the attack paths is a combination of all those views. One favorite that always comes up is around what's the difference between the attack paths in Defender for Cloud? So customers that are using Defender for Cloud today, they have attack paths. What's the difference between that versus this one? Because that's one of the questions we got. Is this covered cloud only, or is it on-prem? And what's the scenario like?
Actually, attack path analysis was pioneered by cloud security solution. I mean, the concept of attack path existed for many years. If you're familiar with concept like Bloodhound, that exists for many years, the ability for lateral movement and understand how an attacker will lateral move within the organization, which is kind of the basic building block of an attack path, because you want to do the simple hop. But I would say that the whole concept exploded in the cloud, because you can pull the context pretty easily using API and using kind of a different method in order to build kind of this connected graph. But the challenge, so most of you, I assume, stumble upon the concept of attack path through a cloud security solution. Most of them has some sort of a graph, because eventually the cloud is a graph of connected resources. The challenge with that concept is that if you want to protect an attack surface, let's say the cloud attack surface, you cannot just look at that specific attack surface, because there's always that residual risk, that risk that put that attack surface at risk. And this is exactly the difference. Looking only at cloud attack path just gives you kind of the picture from a cloud practitioner of what's my cloud issues. What you don't get to see is what else outside of the cloud is putting me at risk. Whether there's an endpoint employee, a developer that just coded up their new, Azure application and has some secret token in his laptop, or a cached credential in the browser that allows admin privilege into the portal. Those are key things that can compromise the cloud that clouds still don't see. So this is kind of the beautiful thing about connecting the dots and seeing the attack path analysis from an attack perspective, and not an attack path from just a cloud perspective, a narrow perspective.
I like it. And in the attack path view, you'll see the attack paths being hybrid, on-prem, and cloud. Like, you'll see the different types, where they originated, and kind of which domains they work around, right?
And build your own attack. And build your own attack path, because naturally you can decide what is the source, what is the destination, what is the critical, view in the map, explore, and so on. Pretty much, once the data is modeled, everything is pretty much limitless.
So one of the attack paths, and I got one more question on kind of the attack paths and capabilities for that, is how do you combat social engineering attacks like email phishing? Or where does that fit into the picture of attack paths and security initiatives and so on?
So go ahead.
Go ahead.
I love this question, because I love that idea. And we were just talking about bringing, it's kind of all about what data we can bring into that exposure graph in order to create those connections. It's all about that, right? So something like this, we were just talking about, can we bring some kind of human risk analysis data into the graph in order to exactly see, those types of things, right? Like, what would happen if, so-and-so user, there was a phishing attack, and then they were able to then access, based on that password, this additional resource and reach a critical asset and map that whole thing out. And those are exactly the kind of things we're trying to model in that graph in order to create exactly paths like that. So, once we're bringing in data kind of from Defender for Office, to understand, hey, what are the phishing risks across, different sets of users? What are the potential risks around these particular kinds of attacks? And then how can we map those out? So
Mhm.
these are exactly the kinds of things we're trying to model. This is the stuff that gets us excited. How can we, see how to model these things, understand what a phishing attack could lead, and then create those kinds of that kind of visibility for customers to know, how to cut off exactly those types of paths.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, like Tomer, like this exists in the product today
Mhm.
with the social engineering and business email compromise and so on in there, right?
Yeah, and more than that. So we have a set of security initiatives that specifically tackle phishing, such as a back business email compromise, which is probably one of the biggest threats out there, along with ransomware. And we provide kind of tailor-made recommendation on what you need to do in order to improve your posture. But if you want to evaluate your exposure to phishing, this is something that we're also looking into. This is still not in the product. We're looking into integrating
Yeah.
phishing simulation into the product. So imagine, for example, that Tomer, failed a couple of times a year a phishing simulation test. And that means that I might be the weakest link in the organization, which means that I should be the entry point for an attack path, because I click on everything if I fail multiple tests. So we see a lot of customer demand of pulling data from those phishing simulation and having that context as the beginning of an entry point, at the entry point of an attack path. Start from all
Yeah.
the users that most likely will fail a phishing attempt, and those are the entry points toward your critical assets. So this is another kind of way to build attack path and measure your exposure on top of the initiative that provide kind of what you need to do in order to improve your posture, right? So two different
I like
two
that.
different
Yeah.
two different tools, and you need to do both. You need to improve your posture, and you need to do it proactively, and you need to react faster to your exposure. And this is kind of the set of tools that we delivered this year.
I like that, and that kind of gives you all on the call and on the AMA today, like a little view into where we are also heading, like what's our mind around, what's our strategy vision, right? Today, the tool kind of looks at the security control of all users should have gone through the phishing training or the trainings and so on. But here's like, okay, what if they actually fail, right? We're building that into the scenario and want to try to expand on that capability as well in there, right?
Yep.
We have one question that we already answered. I'm just going to repeat it, and then we can go on. Does exposure management replace any security products? It does not replace any security products. You still have to buy and use vulnerability management technologies. You have to buy Defender for Cloud or Wiz or Palo Alto or something and integrate it. It's a unification layer that adds these new capabilities on top, right? It's not replacing or it's not replacing any of the security tools that an organization has, right? All right, a large question, which is kind of the essence of what we're trying to get customers and what we're trying to push in the market today, and what's happening is, does exposure management replace any? Sorry, wrong question. Can we use exposure management? Sorry, where did it go? How would you balance? Sorry, too many questions. How would you balance proactive exposure management with reactive incident response? I would kind of like to get both of your views on that one because it's such an important aspect of it, right? And I know we could keep 30 minutes on this, but let's keep it a little bit shorter. Yeah.
All right, I can start. So this is really important. I think these are definitely two sides of the coin, and customers need to focus on both elements, right? That you're gonna you have to have an assume risk perspective. You have to assume that there's going to be assume breach. You have to assume that you're going to have alerts. You're going to have to handle those incidents. On the other hand, you're trying to be as proactive as possible and cut those off. One of the things that I think is really exciting about our solution is that once customers do see, are handling incidents, you're in the SOC, you're handling the incident, you see all this data, but we're all kind of in part of the same Defender portal. And once a SOC analyst can go and analyze, hey, here's what I found about this incident. Here's some, digging deeper, understanding what assets are involved, understanding what identities are involved, so on. Now from here, they can actually pivot to exposure management, to understanding the assets, understanding the attack paths, understanding what connections are there in the graph. And from there, they can actually cut off a huge set of additional potential incidents in that same direction, right? So I think these are so complementary to each other in that sense, right? Where, on the one hand, here's this incident, you're already kind of, behind the bang, you've gotten breached by something, but now you can go and find all the other related potential breaches based on that, that kind of path and those kinds of things. And that's what I would recommend, customers always do, right? Okay, now we're handling this. Let's go find all of the potential kind of relevant or related assets in that sense. So
Cool.
you can actually see your kind of blast radius from that area. What else could be impacted? Let's cut that off. Let's do that. Anyway, that's my
Thank
take
you.
on it.
Thank you. No, I love it. Perfect. What about Tomer? Anything to add?
Wow, so this is a great question. So there's a fine art of balance over here, right? Fix too fast, you might break the business. Fix too slow, you might get compromised, right? So it's kind of always that's all about risk management. But attack surface grows dramatically, right? We now need to handle everything, identity and fabric. A recent research that we done showed that enterprises has on average between 200 and 300,000 assets to manage. And it keeps growing and growing in the age of AI and low code, no code. That is, with a simple prompt, you create an app. It's an asset that you need to protect, that is doing things that you might not be aware of. So naturally, the assume breach mindset is starting to shift left. An organization mindset has to shift left, right? If 10 years ago it was all about we cannot protect everything, so at least let's detect it. We cannot keep that mindset anymore, and we need to start shifting left into more proactive. Now, and this is kind of the tools and kind of that we discussed earlier. And it's kind of a continuum, right? Because you always need to go and hunt for your next risk, and you can do that today when we're modeling. When you having the exposure graph in your disposal is something that is invaluable, right? For defenders, this is like an attacker view that provides you a visibility of this is how I'm going to get attacked. Now, the question is, what do I need to start with first? So first of all, I think super important to start embracing the proactive mindset, working with the different team, with the SOC, with the vulnerability management team, with the identity access management team, with the cloud team. They all need to embrace that and gradually start to using that, and that proactive mindset that will start shifting left. And it's a continuum, which means that we won't be able to fix everything. At least fix the things that put us at the highest exposure. But even if we got breach, we can actually contain it faster than before, because even if the attacker is there, as Ronit mentioned earlier, we can build a blast radius and ask the $1 million question: where would the attacker go from here? And we know that. We know that because we have the graph. The defenders have the graph. We shifted the asymmetry. Imagine attackers, when they landed in the organization, there's the fog of war. They have no idea where they're going. They need to start, looking around. You have the map, you have the graph of things. You can go and push that proactive. So even if you got breached, be proactive about it. Go hunt, figure out where the attacker will go, and fix it faster than they do. So I think it's a balance art, and I think over time more customers will start to embrace the proactive. And there's many kind of best practices how to do that.
I would just add that please, everyone on the call, evaluate treating new attack paths just like you would an incident. An attack path that pops up, especially those that lead to your critical assets, is just an incident waiting to happen. Why not work on it ahead of time before it becomes an incident, right? So treat attack paths specifically as potential incidents, and get that little light bulb flying around in the SecOps team and security admin team and everybody like, oh my God, we got to go stop this one. We got to close this attack path so before attackers take care of it. Right? So balance the two is super important. It's not either or, it's the balance between the two, right? I love that scenario, right? Okay. What are the key steps or best practices would you recommend building an effective exposure management program from the ground up? Right. What could we do for customers, and where do they start with all this?
Yeah,
Ronit,
I
why don't
prob-
you kick off first, and like what do you want to connect first? Like,
Yeah. I was going to say this is Tomer's favorite question, so we have to let him
I know.
answer. But let's just I'll just start, and then I'll let Tomer take it because I know
Mhm.
this is his bread and butter here. But essentially, the concept of exposure management is born from what we call CTEM, continuous threat exposure management. Always be kind of aware of, what are the possible exposures, what are the possible threats, and have this kind of continuous tracking mindset, right, of how to manage all these. And we're trying to build that kind of mindset, that process. It's not, that CTEM is not a product. It's a process. It's a mindset, right? To
Yeah.
always kind of be on top. And this is relates to everything we've been talking about, right? Brian and I are saying, hey, make sure that you know what attack paths are there. Don't wait till they become an incident. You need to have this constant awareness of how to build this program, and keep track along the way. And Tomer, I'll let you give the key steps for how to build that.
Yeah.
yeah. So beyond what Ronit just mentioned, eventually it's really about, because CTEM is a process. Because CTEM is a process, it's really all about a maturity model. Like every process, you need to gradually adapt. You don't go CTEM in one day all in. And the idea behind it is start small. And in order to build an attack surface, in order to build an exposure management program, you need to start building together a technology stack and chain it together. For example, connecting your CMDB, starting building your attack surface by connecting the dots and bringing the tools, building the inventories, right? The more data sources you connect, the better your inventory becomes. Every different data source knows a little bit of information about your assets. The CMDB knows your owner, and the Qualys of the world knows about the vulnerability, and the Intune of the world know about kind of your policies, and the endpoint knows about your endpoint policies. And it's all scattered around. So first of all, bring it all together, consolidate, deduplicate, normalize. This is kind of the basic bread and butter, building an attack surface management. And expand the attack surface, right? There's many attack surfaces, identity and cloud and SaaS and OT and IoT, and we can go on and on. Every day you'll hear about a new SPM. I remember there's throw a letter in the ABC, add an SPM to that. There's probably already a tool for that, and there's a reason, because there's so many attack surfaces out there. So really, first of all, really about the discovery, and most importantly, one of the things that I'm a big believer in, don't boil the ocean. Because there's so many attack surfaces, go back to the basics, scope it down. Understand what is important to your business. The vulnerability management tools, the identity tools, the endpoint tools have no clue about your business. There are technology tools that will spit out whatever they find out. What they don't know, what they cannot connect, is to your business. And this is kind of the basic building block. Understanding kind of what are the key projects, what are the key assets, what are the key business units that I need to protect more than other. So
Yeah.
this is kind of the building block. On top of that, of course, you need to change vulnerability assessment solution, vulnerability prioritization solution to go risk-based vulnerability management. You want to add TI on top of it, right? Because you want to make sure that what you're taking is actionable into your business. If you're concerned about a specific threat actor in your specific vertical, you want to make sure that you discover everything,
Yeah.
that you find all the vulnerabilities, and you map those into the vulnerabilities. If you want to become even more mature, you want to hook in posture management tools to verify whether the control that you deployed, the postures of your attack surface, is actually doing what it's supposed to do, because perhaps maybe you're protected. If I have a CV on my device, but there is a compensating control that is optimized and well configured, then I'm vulnerable, but I'm not at risk. Different kind of priority game. And of course, you can keep on going and going in the advancement level. You want to go better, start to adopt an attack path analysis solution. You want to go better, introduce a breach and attack simulation to simulate attacks on your controls. And this goes on and on. So there's a whole chain of technology stack that you can go. I would start with connecting your CMDB or whatever your CMDB tool is, having an visibility to all the 4 important attack surfaces: internal infrastructure, external visibility from the outside world, cloud, and end user, our PC.
I like it. Perfect. There's one small follow-up question, and then we'll kind of wrap up and give some links to more content. But does AttackPath look at all your policies? For example, if a user is compromised and all organizational policies block normal users from having elevated permissions, so does it sense these policies that are in the controls? You kind of mentioned it when you walked through the conversation here, but like, does it just alarm, or does it actually take into account the different security controls that exist in the organization?
It has to. If not,
Yes.
it's a false positive, right? If there's a compensating control in the network and that is blocking a certain access, and the edge in the graph will not be created in the first place. If we don't have that edge in the graph, it's either we don't have this data, so go connect, or we have a false positive. That's this is the issue with exposure graph, right? It's based on data. The more data, the smarter we get. So go ahead and connect more tools.
Yeah, exactly. And all the tools that you have in the Microsoft stack should be default integrated. And then with Ronit and her team's help, more and more of these third-party tools are getting integrated and visible throughout not just exposure management, but also, like Ronit talked about, visible through other defenders and other security tools from Microsoft. So you mentioned that Defender XDR actually announced as well at Ignite that they now have an integration with AttackPath and Blast Radius and those capabilities directly within the incident view. So this is the GA is here. It's starting there. Like we're really landing some really interesting capabilities for organizations to implement their exposure management technologies. Any last thoughts, Ronit?
Yeah, no, this was really fun to do. We're very excited to have exposure management now available as GA. I think this is, I think customers are going to be really excited about having this, basically this consolidating layer, right on top of all the different security signals that we're bringing in from the different tools, the different attack surfaces, as Tomer was talking about, bringing all this data together, consolidating it, finally giving customers kind of a central view of here's what everything looks like, and it's part of the it's part of the product, it's part of your Defender, right? Like we just give this additional layer as part of that view for everything, and enable bringing all the different signals in from from wherever the customer has them in their environment, their entire digital surface basically, and being able to provide this view. So I think this is exciting. We're excited about it. We're excited to give customers this ability to better prioritize, to get ahead of these risks, to be able to better protect their environments. And we're excited, to hear everybody's feedback and to make the product better as we go.
Perfect. Love it. Anything else exposure for Tomer to add? I think that was a great summary, by the way.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I won't have any words. Super excited to hear about customer feedback, and looking forward for you to give it a test drive, play around with AttackPath Security Initiative. There's so much new things that planned ahead. And thank
All
you for
right.
joining us.
Thank you so much. And I'll just wrap it up and say it's all available today. If you have any one of the Defender products like we talked about earlier, it's available in the Defender portal. It's at the top on the left-hand side, exposure management. Start looking at it and understanding what it can bring for you and your organization all up. The link on the screen, aka.ms exposure management, is to our website. That has also the links to our documentations, short link as well, aka.ms/exposure management docs, that goes to our documentation and our guidance document and the guidance as well. But there's plenty more information to have, and please start using it and follow up any more questions we can try to get in there, and then go do the Security for AI AMA now. So thank you everyone for your time, and until next time, thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you.